Wolterstorff, what would you see as the difference between analytic and continental philosophy and how they address this issue of Christian humanism?
To pinpoint the difference between analytic and continental philosophy is hard. Anybody feels the difference, but to actually put the difference into words is not easy. It's partly got to do with the texts that you deal with. The texts tend to be quite different. I mean, some of the texts are the same. Kant, both analytic and continental people talk about Kant, Descartes, Locke, and so forth. It tends to divide after Kant. There are some analytics who talk about Hegel, but not all that many, whereas Hegel is a looming presence in continental. And then by the time we get to the 20th century, they have pretty much parted ways. Some people, Paul Ricoeur and Habermas especially, coming out of the continental tradition, certainly are learned and knowledgeable in the analytic tradition and interact with it and so forth. So the difference is, boy, the analytic people tend to be more systematic, problem-oriented. Continental people tend to be more text-oriented. They will typically respond to a text or a couple of texts, something like that. They also interact with text in a different way. It's extremely difficult to pinpoint how that is, but what tends to happen more in the continental tradition and the analytic is that people will think of themselves as followers of Gadamer, followers of Heidegger, followers of Derrida. And it's just, to me, looking at it as an outsider, a few people stick their heads up, of course, and they become the ones that people follow. Habermas sticks his head up, Derrida, and so forth. But it's a much more commentary, maybe that's a way of putting it, much more commentary-oriented way of doing philosophy. About the best I can do. Now, who's going to do better at discussing humanism, and in particular Christian humanism? Well, probably one would expect that people from the continental tradition would do better, just by virtue of being more commentary-oriented, which is sort of humanist way of going about things in the first place. So if one is making comparisons, the analytic tradition is much more like the school philosophers of the Middle Ages, late Middle Ages, and the continental people are much more like philosophically trained humanists,
Right.
something like that.
Yeah, excellent. Okay.